thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to address everyone at JAXConf. This is actually my first time speaking at JAXConf. They wouldn't send me to mine, so I get to do the one here. But that's very good for me because it's quite close. First of all, I'm just going to put this legal slide up. You can all read it while I'm talking. All right, there we go. So just a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. As Mark mentioned, I run the development team for Java SE and the Java SE platform at Oracle. I've been doing that now for about 3 years, since Oracle acquired Sun. Prior to that, I ran the JRocket team for Oracle and previously for BEA. And I actually got started with Java many years ago. I was on the Java team at JavaSoft, even before it was sort of sucked into the Sun mothership. So that was from early days. I think there were about 30 odd developers on the team when I joined. And I am responsible for some fairly egregious bits of code, which I hope none of you Google and look at. But I went over to the dark side many years ago, and so I've been involved in management of teams that are working on Java and other technologies like Java. I had a brief flirt with startups in about 2000 to 2002. I don't know if any of you remember, but those were particularly bad years to do startups. So anyway, I came to my senses and came back to the Java fold, as I hope many of you also will do if you've dallied with other technologies. So first of all, just sort of a general kind of perspective of how we view Java at Oracle. I think there are really for us 3 very important things that all have to kind of work together. One is the technology, and this is something that clearly is very strong, has been strong for many years, but at the time that we came into the picture, needed a little bit of kind of picking up and dusting off and getting moving again. On the community side, it's clear there's a very passionate community around Java, and I'm going to touch on a few different points of that. But that's something that always has been a strength of Java, that it really is more than just one vendor kind of telling you how it needs to be. It really is a community of people working together to make something that works for the entire world. And I think the technology is stronger for that, and certainly it's something that we all enjoy. And then the final part is Oracle leadership. And there's a reason that we use the word steward when we talk about our responsibility for Java. And this is basically that we have a very large investment and a lot of reasons to work on Java and invest in it. But it also is something where having a community that's completely chaotic is not always the best way forward. Sometimes someone has to sort of hold the flag so that everyone can rally around it. And that's kind of how we see it. I'm going to throw this up quickly because we do have a number of new additions to the JCP during the last year. The JCP, of course, is the standards process through which we standardize Java, both the platform technologies and standalone technologies. And we're really pleased to see this kind of engagement. One of the things I would mention here is that there's been a very nice transition that we've seen over the last couple of years where not only sort of large and small companies are getting involved in this role, but also a number of the user groups that are out there. And this is, I believe, the first time that we've started to see that happen with the London Java community and SuJava from Brazil. And just to show you why this matters, it's because there's a tremendous number of Java user groups out in the world. Now, these, of course, range in size and format, but all of these groups get both some support from Oracle, but are also run by individuals in the community for their communities. I would encourage all of you, actually, how many people are user group members? Okay, so we have a few. For the rest of you, check it out. The Silicon Valley user group is one that's here local and is fabulous. They do a lot of great work, have a lot of good talks, and so I'd encourage you to think about joining it. So here's just a short list of things that you can do, resources you can check out, and ways to get involved. A couple of these I'd call out. I think one of them that's very, very interesting is the Adopt a JSR effort. And this is something where user groups in the community have kind of gotten together in order to learn about JSRs early and to help move them along. So that's definitely one to check out. All right, so what I'm going to do now is go through various areas of Java technology. So I'm going to talk a little bit about SE. We'll talk some about the client. We'll talk about embedded. And finally, we'll talk about EE. All right, so now we get to do another poll. How many people out there are using primarily Java 7 today? Okay, quite a good number. How many people are still using 6? Okay, some of the same hands. How many people are using 5 or earlier? Oh, you all get an A+. And in fact, you'll get an A double plus if you're all on 7. And, oh, wait, we'll have a little bonus, extra credit. How many people have downloaded and tried builds of 8? Ah, okay. We have a few. We'll see. Hopefully, so my goal by the end of the day is for everyone to have said, wow, I really want to go and check this out. So I think what we've seen here in the audience is kind of consistent with what we're seeing in the industry. There is quite a move to 7. As we all know, when a new major version comes out, you'd be kind of crazy to take it and immediately stick it into your data center under a mission critical app. However, there was pretty swift adoption with 7. One of the things that we've been proudest of is the addition of some more ports. We actually added both a port to Mac OS X as well as a port to Linux ARM for Java SE. And in fact, these 2 ports that we did over the course of the last couple of years were as many ports as had been added to the Java SE platform in the preceding 10 years. It's, on the one hand, you don't see that much because it's what you're used to having, just running somewhere else. On the other hand, it's a tremendous amount of work for the team adding support for another platform and making sure that we have those builds coming out at the same time as the other builds. So we have a lot of work going on 8 and 9. And in order to talk about those a little bit, I'd like to invite my colleague Brian Getz up on stage.
This one does have an on-off switch. All right, there we go.
Great. So, so Brian, what's in Java 8? Why should I care?
So there's a lot of good stuff in Java 8. The part that I'm most proud of, and this is what I've been working on for the last 3 years, is adding Lambda expressions to the Java language. Lambda expressions are a powerful language feature in their own right, but they also enable some even more interesting things to happen in the core Java libraries. Java was unfortunately one of the last mainstream languages to arrive at the idea that Lambda expressions are a good idea, but we got there, better late than never. The facilities that we've added in the libraries allow people to take the collections that they've been working with, for 15 years, and do link-style, parallel, map-reduce kind of queries against their data. And the result is that a lot of the common tasks that people do with collections in Java code, the code gets simpler, cleaner, less error-prone, easier to read, and generally allows people to do more with less code. Okay,
excellent. And so if people want to try that out, where should they go?
So all of the new Lambda stuff now is in the JDK 8 binary downloads that you can download off java.net. Historically, we had been working in a sandbox, so we had separate Lambda builds. Going forward, people won't need to download the separate builds. They can just get the main JDK 8 build, and it's all there.
Okay, good. Hey. So I know at the keynote for JAX in Germany, there was a talk by Markus Lagergren on Nashorn. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so Nashorn, which is the name, it comes from the German word for rhinoceros, is an implementation of JavaScript on the JVM. We've had an implementation of JavaScript that's shipped with the JDK for years called Rhino, and so Nashorn is a reboot of our JavaScript implementation. It's written completely from the ground up, much faster than Rhino, and has really nice features for interop with Java and with other languages that run on the JVM.
All right, and so this is a call to action.
Yeah, so people ask what they can do to get involved. A lot of people think in order to be able to contribute to OpenJDK, they have to write code. And while it's great if people do contribute code or contribute test cases, some of the more valuable contributions that we've gotten from the community are people just downloading the code, trying it out, reporting back their experience, whether it be bug reports or this didn't work well with my code or this worked really well with my code. And similarly, you might think that, well, now that we've hit feature complete for Java 8, is there any opportunity to influence the outcome? The answer is yes. We have a long back end on our product cycle, as we move into stabilization, but there's still time to file down rough edges. So, if people, this is really a good time for people to download it, try it out, report back your experiences.
Okay. But tell me just like a little bit practically, how does this work? I mean, I've seen a lot of open source communities where, a bunch of development is kind of done behind closed doors and then it's thrown over the wall. Is that what we're talking about here?
No, one of the big, the big aspects of OpenJDK is transparency. All of the development is done in the open, all the repositories are available in the open, the expert group lists, the JCP expert group lists are in the open, and so, you can see the history of the design discussion, you can see the history of the code evolution, the test evolution, and every time we commit code to the repositories, we get questions on the mailing list of, oh, I looked at this code you committed. Why did you do it this way? So just the transparency of the code repositories stimulates a lot of useful discussion on the mailing lists.
Okay, thanks. So a couple of words about the future. So I think we know what some of the features are that have been discussed. And you can see some of them listed on this slide. I'd actually like you to tell us a little bit about how you and Mark and the team think about evolving Java.
Yeah, well, so the reality is the world changes, right? Java may, as it was conceived in 1996, may have been a great language for the programming problems that we wanted to tackle in 1996. But the world changes. Hardware changes, the problems that we're trying to solve change, programmer demographics change, programming fashions change, and so, the languages and tools that we use to program need to change with those things. And that doesn't mean we embrace change for its own sake. But we are going to, in a measured way, continue to evolve the language so that it is, continues to be an effective tool to solve the kind of problems that people, want to solve. And so, an example that you had on your slide is GPU programming. We couldn't, in 1996, we couldn't imagine that mainstream programmers would use GPUs to solve problems. But the hardware has evolved this way, and we want to bring that into the programming model and make that easy for Java developers to take advantage of.
Okay. Well, so the approach you're taking of sort of daring to change and evolve, I think sounds generally good. Doesn't it risk sort of running into a situation where we're just kind of cramming more and more and more tools in?
So it certainly is tempting, right? I mean, it's fun to add features. Every Java developer, every one of the 10 million Java developers probably has a pet feature idea in their back pocket, which they will tell you about if they manage to corner you at a bar. And we clearly, could not implement all 10 million of them or even 50 of them. It takes a lot of effort to implement a big language feature, or a big platform feature. So we have to pick very carefully. And so we look at what are the pain points, that developers, that are affecting developers, lives now. And, we try to pick carefully which features will most enable people to move forward without succumbing to, fashion of the week.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of fashion of the week, heard of a lot of great and interesting languages out there doing kind of cutting edge stuff. Do you consider it a problem that Java is not doing that?
No, I think it's great that there are so many languages on the JVM. I mean, we kept a list at one point. We stopped maintaining it. It was over 200 languages, that run on the JVM. If people would rather program in Ruby or they'd rather program in Scala, and deploy on the JVM to get all of, all of the stability and performance benefits, that's just great. We're not going to pull every feature from every one of those languages into Java. We couldn't. But we also can look around the community and see what's working in a lot of other language communities and decide whether maybe it's time to bring that particular feature into Java.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thanks, George.
Okay, and just quickly throwing the roadmap up, I wanted to have this, and I'll have equivalent ones in other sections, mostly just for reference. Okay? I'm going to say a few words now about JavaFX. How many people out there have tried out JavaFX? Okay, a few. So this is really something that has had kind of a long history in various forms. The way that we're sort of viewing this is basically a sort of restart on client technology, kind of keeping up with things that people are used to using. I actually mentioned when I was working on the client team earlier, I worked on the AWT team and was one of the founders of the Swing team. So this is an area that's near and dear to my heart. I've been very, very impressed with the work that's been done on FX, and I think in its current form, as it's been sort of made to be Java APIs and useful from Java and useful in many of the places where rich client technology is useful, it's really quite impressive. We do have quite a few deployments actually out in the field. JavaFX is now in OpenJDK, so this is something that you can go and check out the source code to. There are a few bits that are still on their way to being opened up, but this is something that I think is a tremendous step forward in terms of transparency. They've also done a bunch of work with being able to package for the Mac App Store, and I expect we'll see similar things for other kinds of app stores out there in the future. Here again, there's no lack of ideas of things that could be done. I think OpenJDK is a tremendous place for you to be able to go and sort of see this development happening, and also to give us feedback on what things you'd like to see, or perhaps even contribute yourselves. So please do check that out. The roadmap for this is actually the same roadmap that was on the previous slide, with just a few bits kind of called out there that are client specific. Okay, now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a space that is fairly new for me, but I think is extremely exciting. Here's why I want to talk about this. I think as we look back over kind of the last 50 years or so, what we can see is that there have been several distinct kind of ages of computing. Right, so in the beginning, computing was this thing done by people in white lab coats at big companies or government institutes, and then we had a period where basically ordinary people, people like us, were able to get access to this technology and start to use it and start to work on it. And now many people out there have said that we're coming to a time which they dubbed the Internet of Things. This is basically a time where computing is kind of moving beyond laptops and desktops to being something that's pervasive and kind of all around us. In some of the sort of small magical devices that many of us hold, but even in a lot of other kinds of devices, small things like sensors and other things like that. And in fact, we now apparently are at the point where the number of devices, and I should point out the number of connected devices, is actually surpassing the number of people in the world. So I think if you sort of think through your daily routine and what you do, we've gotten to a point where these things are all around us, and sometimes we don't even think about it. But in a typical day, we might actually come into contact with hundreds of these things. In fact, many of our homes, many of our cars actually already have 50 or 100 of these kinds of small connected devices. And so what that means is that there are a tremendous number of potential use cases for this technology out there, right? So just a few examples I'll throw up. One here in traffic management. Industrial automation, that one's kind of clear and has been around for a while. Retail. Transportation. And of course in healthcare as well. And one of the neat things about this is it really is something that brings about a potential to have completely new kinds of things done, and really the limit here is starting to get to the point where it's our imagination. I'll give you kind of an example. Here's a home automation, and in fact just looking around this house, there are all kinds of different places and points where devices can be connected. And they're not just things that are now like smart little gadgets. They're actually connected gadgets that are providing some kind of data that can be remotely updated, where new facilities can be added dynamically on the fly. And so I think for us involved with development, this is an extremely exciting time. Here's another thing that I think is exciting about it, is that we're actually coming to the point where the technologies needed in order to program these devices is becoming much, much, much more accessible. So it used to be the case that it was kind of a black art putting together some a software stack for one of these things. We're now at the point where these devices are capable enough that they can run many of the technologies that we here in this room like. And in fact, we've been talking a lot with people involved in working in this space, both companies and developers. And one thing that seems very clear, they view this as an area where new possibilities are happening, but with those possibilities come a new set of challenges, right? It's extremely difficult and expensive if every time you're going to make one of these devices, you have to create your own new proprietary software stack, right? It's very, very difficult and expensive if the only developers that you can get in order to put together your application for your new device come from a small set of people that know some obscure language, right? So it's very, very difficult if when you want to make a shift, maybe in the middle of a project or maybe between projects, all of this has to be redone, right? And in fact, one of the things that struck me as I started looking at this area is that this sounds to me a lot like the way the workstation or desktop or PC world looked prior to Java, right? Basically, you were kind of at a point where a lot of time was spent by development teams. And I remember this like yesterday because I was on one of these teams where we would spend all of our time developing on one primary platform. And then we had a team that was just about as big as that primary development team that was working on nothing other than porting to everything else, right? And it wasn't much fun, and it meant that you were spending a lot of your time on things that weren't what you considered your core business. And so, for me, one of the great advances that Java brought with it was the ability to not have to worry about that anymore, because you could just worry about developing your application, and you would know that there was going to be a performant, scalable runtime on the platforms that people cared about. So this is exactly what we're seeing now in the embedded space, is basically a huge amount of fragmentation, a huge amount of inefficiency and cost that everyone throughout the industry is bearing, and none of them want to bear. And so I think this is an area that is sort of rife for disruption, and I think Java is a great technology to do that. Okay? So I'm going to mention just a couple of things that are sort of already there today, because when I say this, it sounds like, oh, now we're going to go do some brand new thing. Well, of course, this isn't something that's brand new. This is an area where Java has played for many, many years, and a lot of the pieces of technology are there. They're just things that are sort of getting pulled together, and to some extent, the devices have moved to a point where some of these technologies work more smoothly, as we see with our phones, right? Every day they're getting more capable. The same is true even on the low end. And so we have a couple of releases that if you're interested in looking at this area, you might want to go and check out. One is a new release of Java ME, and that's for the sort of quite small, very low footprint devices. And then another is Java SE Embedded, which is basically SE sort of slimmed down and sort of tailored to run on smaller devices. And in fact, something else that we've released, which is called Java Embedded Suite. And this is basically something that lets you handle that kind of case that we saw in the smart home earlier, where you have a bunch of edge devices, and they have some amount of connectivity, but perhaps not all the way to the back end. Typically, what they're doing is connecting to some kind of local gateway or condensation point that basically is sort of taking and coalescing the information, possibly massaging it, and determining what gets sent to the back end, and so on. So this is perfect for that. If you haven't checked it out, please do. And in fact, we have a complete roadmap here for those. Okay, I'm going to go on, and now in the final section, I'd like to talk about Java EE. And in order to help me with that, I'd like to invite my colleague Arun Gupta up on stage.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, we have to do this. All right, let's go. So Arun, why don't you tell me what's going on in EE?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, Java EE, has been extremely popular, sort of the #1 standard for building enterprise application. Some of the key tenets of the Java EE platform itself are, it's focused on developer productivity. It's focused on you. We want to make you productive, so the focus has been building you, giving you more POJO-driven objects. Just on a POJO, you put an annotation, and let the container take care of the plumbing or all the infrastructure part of it. It is a lot about portability. We have the broadest industry adoption in terms of 18 compliant application servers on how you can build your application to the Java EE API and just seamlessly run on any of the compliant application servers. 18 is a pretty big number with a good mix of open source and commercial vendors that works very well. Extensibility, modularity, some of the key aspects. These are sort of the key tenets of Java EE in general.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how this was put together?
Absolutely. Oracle is the steward for the Java EE, but effectively this is all driven by the community, people like you, really. And this is what is a symbol of it. As a matter of fact, Java EE 7, which is just ready to release, literally next week, and we'll talk about that in a minute, was put together by 14 active JSRs as part of the Java community process. That was led by 16 different specification leads. And there were expert group members, about 200 expert group members from 32 different companies all around the world. So truly a global phenomenon in that sense. So really, really tremendous. There were about 26 active Java.NET projects, everything done in a completely transparent manner following the GCP transparency rules. And Glassfish 4, which is the reference implementation for Java EE 7, there have been 89 promoted builds. So completely, again, driven by you, feedback by you, features by you, so that is just tremendous.
Great. Okay, and as you mentioned, 18 different implementations of EE6, and I think some of the fastest adoption, and those have been coming out at quite a pace, right?
Right, I think that is you said it very rightly. Fastest adoption in terms of fastest adoption by the application server vendors and by the developers. In the sense, we have done this is the 6th release of Java EE that we have done. Within 2 years, we had about 18 plus compliant application servers, giving, again, you a chance to build your application and run it in a very portable way.
And that doesn't happen without the transparency you were talking about earlier.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think, I tell my kids all the time, the 2 key tenets that values to me is honesty and transparency, and that truly shows up right here itself.
Okay. So why don't you tell us, you mentioned that EE7 is final. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's in it?
Right. Java EE 7 is, the specifications are final. They were done a few days ago already. Java EE 7 is ready to be released. It's going to be done next week. 3 primary themes over there. The first one being, embracing HTML. So as our HTML5 effectively. In terms of HTML5, well, we've been doing HTML for a while, so it would be silly to say that, but HTML5. In terms of HTML5, we are giving you first-class support for WebSockets, building WebSocket-driven applications, giving you a native support for JSON processing, allowing those HTML5 pass-through attributes, like those type and all those things which were not available with JSF earlier. So all of those are very, very core to the application platform. Now the other part of the second theme of Java EE 7 is developer productivity. In Java EE 6, primarily because the way CDI was introduced late in the game, we could not do a lot of alignment. But now we are providing a lot more cohesive, integrated platform with CDI, manage beans, EJBs, transaction, all of those concepts very well tightly aligned with each other, truly giving you a feeling of an integrated, cohesive platform, again focused on developer productivity. And then Java EE, of course, is very well for enterprises. For them, we are again giving two brand new specifications, a standard way of building batch applications, first of all. No need for a third-party proprietary framework library. No, it's part of the platform now. And then concurrency utility APIs. So lots of new feature action-packed release literally coming up.
Great. And did you mention that this was final?
This is final. Actually, that's correct. So the Java EE 7, all the JSRs are final for a few days now. In terms of the implementation, the reference implementation, which is typically given to the licensees only, is being done as well. But for you as a developer, we've been using build 89 for a couple of weeks. That's sort of the final candidate. But a Java EE 7 SDK, which contains not only just the implementation, but tutorial, docs, samples, all of that integrated bundle will be available for you next week.
Okay, and where can we go to hear more about it?
Yeah, and for talking about next week we have an online webinar scheduled for you. It's a Java EE 7 launch webinar. It's an online only event. Handy link is bit.ly link. It's Java EE 7 launch. Highly encourage you to register for it. There is some brand new, there is not some, but there's all brand new content that is generated as part of the launch. So effectively what you will see is business keynote, technical keynote by Oracle execs, customers, partners, why they value Java EE, how they are betting their business on Java EE. Most importantly, and I'm a developer, I'm a geek, so for me what is most interesting is there are 16 sessions by all the specification leads from the Java EE 7 expert group. So these are actual technical breakouts which you can listen on demand. So you register, it's a free online event, you register for the online event, you can listen to all those sessions, and again, you have a chance to engage with the specification leads, asking your questions and getting answers back from them in a live session.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how Adopt-to-JSR has been working throughout this process.
Very well, actually. Adopt-to-JSR, if you understand, Adopt-to-JSR was started by London Java community primarily for grassroots evangelism. And what you're seeing is 19 different Java user groups that participated as part of the Java EE 7 effort. What these jugs did is basically they said we're going to take a look at a JSR or a bunch of JSRs together, and then as part of that, we will either arrange presentations within our Java user groups to educate more about it to our jug members, or arrange hackathons, or build end-to-end sample applications, or anything on those lines. So these jugs, literally, before the JSR became a standard, they started contributing toward the JSR and actually made an impact where the direction of the JSR was changed. As a matter of fact, one of the jugs that I want to highlight here is, for example, Belgium jug. Mm-hmm. They arranged a hackathon on the WebSocket JSR. They built an end-to-end application, which is a tic-tac-toe application, and that is integrated as part of the Glassfish 4 or Java EE 7 SDK.
Nice.
So real contribution actually going back to the community, coming from the community and back to them.
Okay. So how's the reception been for EE 7 thus far?
Very well, actually. If you see the quotes here from David Blevins, who is from Apache Tommy community, or ESPN, or Pete Muir, the response has been just terrific. And I've been presenting Java EE 7 hands-on lab for a few months now, all around the world. Of course, the lab has been evolving. Yesterday, we had a very good session about a few attendees in the lab, but very interactive session, very good feedback, and folks were interested in learning what the new capabilities are coming in there. So overall, the feedback has been just tremendous.
Great. So one thing that's, of course, very important as new versions come out is that the IDEs that we use actually track that. What kinds of things are you doing in order to make sure that happens?
Yeah, I agree. Tooling is very, very important part of it. We have annotations. We can definitely use VI for building your application or just Maven-based tools. But NetBeans, again, provides just a terrific experience in bootstrapping, giving you a simpler out-of-the-box experience where you can just create a Maven project very simply. You have entire code completion, debugging, Glassfish 4 configuration, runtime, debugging, all of that support part of NetBeans itself. So that is just tremendous. They have lots of new wizards that are available for simplifying your experience. Not just NetBeans. Eclipse, they have a Kepler release coming up end of June, has an updated Glassfish plugin as well, where you can configure Glassfish 4 runtime, and they have some new wizards coming in as well. IntelliJ also has some support. It's kind of basic. And I said, of course, you're free to choose your own VI or Emacs support as well.
Okay. So we've talked a bunch about E7. Of course, with 7 coming out now, it's always interesting to look to the future. What kinds of things are you thinking about for 8 and beyond?
Absolutely. So Java EE 7, is going to be the centerpiece. It's going to provide the foundation step for everything that we'll do going forward. So things like, think about modularity. You talked about, how we're going to have modularity in part of Java SE. Build upon that, we will define a concept of how you can do a modular application. Some of the other things that we have been thinking about, how to do JSON binding very easily. Other things we have been thinking about is how to provide a standards-based pass programming model, which was the original theme for Java EE 7, but because of the community feedback, we decided to kind of delay it, and things like that. So all of this is literally up for the grabs at this moment, all being discussed will be discussed by the expert group, and that's when the decision will be made. But this kind of shows you a kind of a feel of what we are planning, actually.
Okay, excellent. And finally, on the roadmap, anything you wanted to say?
Yeah, so Glassfish 3.12.2 is the current release, but literally starting next week, June 12th, as I said, is when the Glassfish 4 open source edition would be available for you to actually run it along with Java EE 7 SDK. Absolutely, I would highly encourage you once again to join the Java EE 7 launch. Show up, in numbers over there, get access to the latest content. Even if you register, if you can't view the content then and there, you have access to all the content to you afterwards.
Okay. Thanks very much, Roy.
Thank you.
Okay, and that concludes our early morning romp through Java technologies. I'd like to thank you all for coming and listening this morning. I know it's sometimes a lot of traffic to get through, and 9 o'clock is pretty early for some of us. Yeah, I resemble that remark. But I think, I hope it's been useful for you. I think that there's a lot to offer, and I hope you get a feel for the kind of investment that Oracle is putting into Java, and also a feel for the kind of excitement that we see in the community as a whole. A lot of new things to try out. I hope that you've all gone away having listened to Brian going, all right, now it's really time. I'm ready to go and try JDK 8, give it a whirl, and give feedback now, so that if there are any issues that you'd like to point out to us, there's an opportunity to get them fixed. On the EE7 side, please take a look next week at the webinar, or in the following days, as Arun says. And also a bunch of interesting things both on the client and in the embedded space that hopefully will spur your thought as you're going forward. So thank you, everyone, and have a great conference.